Bish, maybe you can talk about this, but you said, do you think Rivera would take the job now based on what he's had to deal with for the last several months from the name change? And he, of course, becomes the man front and center talking about it, not Daniel Snyder. And then you had the Washington Post article talking about sexual harassment in the workplace, and he once again is front and center dealing with that, not dealing with coaching. And now you got the Derrius Guice situation. What do you think?
He says he hasn't been asked that, I don't think, exactly directly, but we've kind of hinted around with him the limited availability that we've had, and of course we would have more if it was a normal training camp. We're going to talk to him next hour. He says over and over again about the pressure, about the expectations, about the burden, about all of this nonsense that he's had to deal with, that he would absolutely sign up for it. He knew what he was getting into. He's fine with it. He accepts it. I don't think he likes it. I don't think he's happy with it. He's putting on a good public face, though, is what I would say. And I would only say this. The reason why I think he would take the job again is because he didn't have to take this job. He knew he would have other suitors. He knew he would have other teams, potentially like the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think the Giants would have been in because him and Gettleman didn't get along in Carolina, from what I understand. But he knew he would have had potentially other suitors. So he took this job, oddly enough, because he had a passion for this franchise from growing up, part of his life here and the military thing. So that's why he rushed in my opinion, why he rushed a little bit into the job. He had a passion for changing this franchise and trying to sweep away the culture. Remember, he dealt with a lot of crap with Jerry Richardson down in Carolina. It's not like he's a stranger to this.
Rooster, the thing that really struck me about the Guice charges were just the way Guice had cultivated his image since he had been drafted by the Redskins. He was the guy that, hey, come play Fortnite with me online, or come meet me at the movies, or just come out bowling with me. He was like a man of the people. Like he was out there with Redskins / Washington football team fans. And for all of a sudden for it to come crashing down with these charges, to me, that was the most shocking thing about seeing that he was up on domestic violence charges.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. I mean, I don't want to ever say that was a phony facade by any means, because I genuinely think the kid's, when he's on, he's a nice kid. He's an affable kid. He's always smiling, that type of thing. But from the start, and we all remember what happened in the draft process. Not only did he drop from a mid-first round, you want to say late-ish first-round pick, to a late second-round pick. But remember, guys, the then Redskins, now the Washington football team, not only did they bypass him in the first, they bypassed him in the second round the first time because they traded down in the second round. When they had him at I think it was 44 or 45 or whatever it was, they traded then back down with San Francisco into the mid-50s and still got him. Nobody wanted to touch this kid because of, A, two reasons. One, the medicals, and B, the character concerns, the background, the immaturity, the combustible nature, the volatility. And I had one... This was relayed to me through, a good friend of mine who I implicitly trust, who talked to an NFL general manager at the time, and was relayed to me right after the practice. And I held off on it, so maybe I should have. People are criticizing me when I put it out on Friday night. The one NFL general manager, okay, and I looked up. I kept a note of it because I wanted to say, make sure I have this. Called him the biggest piece of bleep he'd ever come across.
Yeah.
Now,
how do the Skins overlook that? I don't get it.
Well,
talent,
Jason. I think talent and value, right? I mean, this organization, like as many good things as Kyle Smith have done, right?
But it's too much of a risk.
Well, but at 53 or 54, is it the same risk at 15? or even.
I think so. I think second-round picks are pretty damn valuable.
Yeah, he went 59th. He was the 59th pick in that draft.
59. Okay, so it was even lower than I thought it was 54 for whatever reason. Maybe I'm confusing it. But the point is if you can get that dude at 59, right? You say, well, geez, I mean, we haven't drafted a running back at that point in the first or second round in like 20 years. That's what's missing. We need a little sizzle. We need a little pop. Now, remember also, the people that made that decision, Bruce Allen, Dan, and obviously
Snyder.
Dan's part of it, and Jay, they're not as high on character and his, personality and all that stuff as Ron is. Ron is a guy, and this is why he was immediately gone. Remember, Cody Latimer was popped on 5 criminal charges Memorial Day weekend, including 3 felonies, more than Guice. Now, they're different situations, okay, so let's start with that. But Cody Latimer's still on the team. He's still
apparently somebody tweeted us you can't cut somebody who's on the exempt list.
Well, he wasn't on the commissioner's exempt list until 2 weeks ago.
Oh, good point.
I was going to say, why couldn't you cut him the day after he was charged?
They absolutely could have. So my point is they chose Latimer. Latimer's not the player that Derrius Guice. They chose Latimer, 1. 2, I strongly believe, I don't have 100% confirmation on this, that Carolina, when they were down in Carolina, this whole crew, or most of this whole crew, was out on Guice. Now, they had McCaffrey, so it's easy to be out on Guice. But the point of the matter is they still evaluate, they still grade, they still interview, they still judge, they still know these cats, and they were out on him. So to me, when this happened, and maybe even Derrius Guice lied to them on Thursday when he was first, called into the building,
right?
And said, "Oh no big deal, nothing happened." And then all of a sudden you got 5 criminal counts, including 1 felony of strangulation. Get lost.
By the way, Guice retained a pretty high-profile attorney, Peter Greenspun, who represented the Castillo dude in Ashburn who killed his wife in the bathroom and tried to make it look like a suicide.
Yep.
I think he also represented John Muhammad.
He did. Yes, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. So he represented some big-time guys. Can't imagine he's cheap.
No.
No,
but if you're Derrius Guice, what else do you have to lose at this point?
And I also wanted to say
this. A lot of money, but I mean.
Yeah, I wanted to say this real quick before we get back to your original point. On Saturday, we were taking calls on Guice, and a guy called up and said his daughter ran track at LSU and knew Guice. Mm-hmm. And Guice was dealing with these type of allegations then, but LSU did their best to kind of sweep it under the rug.
Right, and Rooster.
So apparently he had that reputation in college.
Yeah,
I didn't know it.
And getting back to why Latimer is still on the roster and Guice isn't, is that Latimer, granted, is facing 3 felonies, gun charges. That's serious. But with the Washington football team going through the culture change and the sexual harassment in the front office, they can't have Guice on the roster in the wake of those sorts of allegations.
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt, Cakes. It's a different time, right? I mean, Latimer obviously happened before the Post article came out, and whether Ron knew something was coming on even back then, I don't know, but I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they chose to keep Latimer and not make an example out of him as opposed to Guice. And I'm going to ask Ron, coming up next hour, or somebody's going to ask him exactly what the difference was, quite honestly, because I want to know his answer for sure on the record. But nevertheless, about his LSU history, again, I didn't know exactly what he was. How do I say this? I don't know exactly what he was up to at LSU, but there were a lot of teams and a lot of people and a lot of smart NFL people that I really respect and like and think highly of that were out on him, that were that thought he was way, way, way too immature and volatile. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be corrected. That doesn't mean he's guilty here. Here's what he's guilty of. He's guilty of bad, terrible judgment to put himself in this position because as far as I know, and I've known you guys for 12, 13 years, whatever it is, and I'm 46, I've never been arrested for any of this stuff. As far as I know, you guys have never been arrested for any of this stuff because we don't put ourselves in these type of situations to be arrested and charged with 5 counts and a felony. Now, could it happen and could some alleged victim make it all? Yes, but you have two different police units here, Montgomery County and Loudoun County. You have several months, from what we understand at least, of a timeline, and maybe they didn't find out about it until recently, either one of these two police units, but they have several months, if you will, from when these incidents happened, the last one being in April. And to me, it's hard to fathom that they just completely fabricated it and made it up, and that Derrius Guice is completely innocent here.
Talking to Chris Russell, insider for the Washington football team. All right, let's talk about what lies ahead for this team at running back. We were kicking it around amongst ourselves. You've got Adrian Peterson, the veteran, who has been here a couple of seasons and has produced, but they wanted somebody else to be the number one. You've got Bryce Love and Antonio Gibson, both who are guys who haven't played one down in the NFL. And then you have J.D. McKissick and Peyton Barber. How do you see it playing out through 16 games?
So last year, week 1 against Philadelphia, in Philadelphia, Adrian Peterson was benched. I think he'll be the starting running back week 1, September 13th, if we get to that point at FedEx against Philadelphia. I do think he'll be in the backfield, first snap, first carry, whatever, however you want to call that. But probably by mid-season, I don't know, week 7, whatever, just mid-season, as long as he's healthy and as long as he hasn't had any setbacks, and I took it as a really good sign that under this medical staff, which is very competent and very on top of things, Ryan Vermillion running the show as opposed to Larry Hess, no offense, I took it as a very good sign that he was cleared, because I know there was earlier this spring some concern. I think Bryce Love is going to be the money guy, the money back. I think he's going to be – I don't know if he'll be the starter in every game.
What are the early whispers? Are there any? I know that they're not practicing with pads, and they're basically doing a bunch of walkthroughs, but what are the early whispers?
From what I understand, looks good. I mean, looks good could be a lot of different things,
Right.
but hasn't had any setbacks from what I understand. Now, I mean, maybe that has changed in the last day or two since I last checked with somebody. But you're right, JP. I mean, no pads, no full practices. Every head coach, every offensive coach would ever tell you the two hardest positions to judge in any kind of training camp is, and why preseason games are so important in their eyes, is running back and safety, because there's no contact, no tackling, no angles, there's angles, but it's just not the same, right? So until we see that, and we're not going to get to see that in a game, but we're going to be allowed out there starting Thursday and Friday morning for I guess it's phase 2. So non-full 11-on-11 practices, but then starting after this Thursday and Friday when we're first allowed out there, then starting, I think it's the next Tuesday, so a week, 8 days from now, then they start full team practices, not pads yet, but full team 11-on-11 practices, so we'll get a better idea exactly at that point. But assuming that he's good to go physically, I think he brings a certain dynamicness. Antonio Gibson's going to be a stud, guys. The problem is he's got 35 carries at Memphis as a pure running back.
Right.
He's got to learn the running back position, not only pass protections, but also his tracks, what they call, where they want him to go, basically reading off of blocks. And that's not as easy as it sounds. So I think it's going to take a little while for Gibson to evolve into that role. That's why I say Bryce Love, if he's healthy, mid-season will be the money back or the primary back.
Are you looking forward to finally being able to go out there and watch him?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Hell yeah. I mean, listen, what can you tell by guys running around in shorts and shells and a helmet? Not a whole lot, right? It doesn't always translate, but it's better than what we've had, right? I'm encouraged, guys. I mean, for all the gloom and doom of this offseason, and there's been a lot of it.
There has been plenty of that.
And there's been a lot of chaos. Yeah. And, again, Ron's never going to admit this, but Ron's got to be pulling out his hair. From what I've been told, he's pulling out his hair. So maybe Ron will show up bald on Thursday. I don't know. But I mean, for all of this nonsense that we all have to deal with, I mean, I still have hope. I still love football, and I still want to see this team gel. And if they've made like a complete 180 on Dwayne Haskins, right? I mean, they've gone from, we're not sure about him. He's got to, do this, and he's got to do all the ominous tones that they had in January and February to, hey, man, thanks for asking about how good Dwayne Haskins has been. They thanked Ben Standig last week, Ron did, for asking about how much progress Dwayne Haskins. That's how far that relationship has come in just 7 months. So assuming that that's all legit and real, and I think it is, I'm starting to get excited. I'm starting to get a little lathered up for Washington football team football.
He may have thanked him for that, but he's probably just thanking him because he didn't have to talk about the post article or the name change. Or they even botched a hashtag over the weekend. So
well, that's a whole nother story. They said that they were negotiating with Twitter. I talked to a team source last night. They said they were talking to Twitter about having special rights to that so that it would pop up with like the helmet logo like you see, some sports teams have that, and they were in negotiations, and then the social media coordinator jumped the gun a little bit, and then it forced them to kind of open up the process. So that was that whole thing. I mean, it was clearly a mistake. They're not trying to hide from a mistake.
Anyway, my point was that Ron probably wants to deal with coaching and talking about players on the field versus all of the side shows.
No doubt. That's what I've been saying for weeks.
Right.
No doubt. No,
Ron is getting paid,
Ron is a football guy, and look, he'll deal with a lot of crap, but he's a football guy, and he's no nonsense too. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of joking around. Yeah. It's not nipple twisting and all that stuff that and jumping on your back like it was here with Club J.
Yeah, I mean, Club J. All right, Russ, we got to run.
I love Jay, but Club J was not good for a winning culture. I can tell you that much.
This is our pal Chris Russell, insider for the Washington football team. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Rooster.